Right on time. Good morning, everybody. Today we're talking about leadership techniques for a unified and effective team. I remember years ago there was a lot of emphasis on team building, and if I remember correctly, it was a lot about jumping off cliffs and getting lost in the bush and things like that. Then it all kind of went quiet for a little while, and now there is really a major refocus on aligning the team. Now, my name is Peter James. I'm with Career Life Transitions, and we work with organisations to help them align their teams to achieve outstanding results. Now, aligning a team is highly important. A team working well together is going to achieve an awful lot more than individuals working against each other or working in competition. And I guess that seems to be what happens in a lot of businesses where egos get in the way, professional courtesies are dropped, and organizations are building teams where they mistakenly believe that if the team is in competition with other members of the team, that it will achieve more. That is clearly demonstrably not the case. So what we're going to be looking at today is, what does a high-performing team look like? How do we build a high-performing team? The key role that leadership plays in building that team, and how do you get started in building a high-performance team? This is always one of my favourite cartoons from way back in the day. I've got a two Omar Strange feeling I've just been going in circles. That balance of a team is something that I guess is key to pulling together an effective group of people who are all pulling not only in the same direction, but pulling their weight and looking to achieve the goals the team is trying to achieve. That was one of the lasting comments, and there were quite a few around team building, and I guess we laugh at them because we've seen that happen so many times. I guess that's what makes comedy so funny, is sometimes just pointing out the obvious. So some information for you, and this is from a Berkman International study in April 2020. Only 16% of the global workforce is fully engaged, and that's a study of 19,000 workers. And that what drives engagement more than any other factor is whether people are working as part of a team unified by purpose. In one study, Cisco determined that once an employee reaches a lower 50% of engagement scores, they are 45% more likely to leave the company. And Deloitte's 2019 Human Capital Trends Insight showed that 65% of respondents view the shift from functioning hierarchy to team-centric organisation as critical to future success in a disruptive marketplace. So the takeaway from all of that is organisational performance is a team sport, that organisations being part of a group, being included in a group is very important to people in any organisation. And I guess the other part of building a team that has really grown in the last few years is the leadership component of it. We're very good at managing, but I guess when we move into that leadership, there is a lot of misunderstanding as to what that leadership actually means and what it looks like, and what it takes to be a leader of a team as well as a manager of a team. Now, we're big fans of Lencioni's model there. So great teams have incredible trust in each other. That trust leads to the ability to have open, honest conversations. Teams that have robust, open, honest conversations develop commitment. With commitment comes accountability. With accountability comes results. So I guess what it's saying is that the bottom layer of that cohesive team model of Lencioni is trust. And how do you build trust in the team? Because everything flows on from that ability to build trust. If you're working in a team where it is very hierarchical, or where there's very managed, if you like, structured in some way, it's difficult to build trust. And trust comes from developing relationships. And that component of building a team is probably the key component that seems to be missing in a lot of teams that we're working with. Now, Certainly Integro define trust in 4 ways. Reliability, I'll do what I say I'll do. Acceptance, who you are is okay with me. In other words, the team accepts the members for who they really are. Openness, I give and ask for feedback freely. And congruence, what I say is what I mean. Now, a couple of those, yeah, okay, there you could probably say, yeah, that's definitely where I sit. But when you start talking about acceptance and openness, I think they are the ones there where trust can be damaged in some way, because we can say we do those kind of things, but facts of the matter are they are quite difficult to do if you don't feel a real level of trust from the other person. I mean, a couple of those things are driven by my integrity. I'll do what I say I do, or I say is what I mean. But who you are is okay with me really requires that who I am to them is okay with them. And that I give and ask for feedback freely, that the other person is also giving and asking feedback freely. And that's where some of the challenges start to kick in. So to be persuasive, we must be believable. To be believable, we must be credible. And to be credible, we must be truthful. And truthful is about trust. And trust is the basis of great teams. So where do high-performance teams operate? We'll be having a look at this model. Across the bottom, you have concern for results, where there is a real orientation towards achieving an outcome. It's a very, a task-oriented model. And up the left-hand side is a concern for people. Now, managers, I've seen managers who are great people, the team love them, they're a lot of fun to be around and what have you, but they're not actually achieving a high performance output. And this model talks about country club management. On the other side, some people who believe that leadership is about authority and compliance, really you are driving towards outcomes. But what you leave behind there is what I like to call discretionary effort, the discretionary effort that someone puts in. Now, having an authority compliance management may drive the results, but it will drive the results at a greater cost if you don't have people's discretionary effort. Discretionary effort really is the oil of any organisation. It's that willingness for someone to say, I'll go that extra yard, I'll put the extra communication in, I'll take care of this before I leave for the evening, I'll inform people around me, I'll get involved in conversation. All those type of things really are the oil of great organisations. Therefore, a high-performance team is one that's committed to its people through a common outcome and building relationships of trust and respect, but still focusing on achieving what the team has brought together. We use a couple of different models to look at this type of where people sit in that. The DISC model is great, Integro. We'll talk about DISC and their team assessment survey, which we've rolled out to a number of organisations as well. And the LSI from Human Synergistics is another one of the tools that we assess in terms of people's leadership and where they sit in terms of their ability to engage the team as well as drive outcomes and results. Now, if I have a look at the results side of it, which is across the bottom, what am I doing to build a great team? And here are some of the roles, and this comes from Brett Reed from Safety Leaders Group, some of the roles that I need to put in place or activities I need to put in place to drive those results. And it starts with I delegate meaningful work to the team. People understand where their contribution is adding value to our outcomes, that I'm being held accountable for the results I'm responsible for. It's not just get on and forget, but I'm actually standing up and asking you to be accountable for what you said you're going to do. You see these things also adding to the trust. That a leader behaves in a way that's congruent with these stated values, that there is an acceptability and responsibility for decisions and behaviours, that there's a willing to experiment new ways of doing things, that there's timely and constructive feedbacks to facilitate continuous improvement of the team, that people can solve problems or are helped to solve problems to remove barriers to performance, that we ensure we meet our customers, in other words, our external and internal customer needs, And we clearly communicate, and it's clearly communicated what is expected of me. These are the leadership roles in building the results. But on the other side of it, and we're going up the left-hand side now, what are the people components of leadership? That the leader understands and recognises my contribution to the team's performance, encourages and supports the ongoing development of my skills and knowledge, respects me as a person, helps me perform my job effectively, helps us work together as a team, and treats everyone fairly. Now, these are, I guess, the balance, and it's an extensive list, but you can start to see where these are building trust in the team, where there is trust in the team for open communication, where everyone has that sense of providing trust and being trusted, that I can have robust conversations, that I am getting my team's approval across the board for what we're trying to achieve, and that there's some commitment out of that, because without those robust conversations, great teams that are achieving great things do have robust conversations. Just agreeing with what's being said and going along with that, well, that's good management, but it's not good leadership, and good leadership is what builds great teams. Now, there is the evolution of a high-performing team. And many of you may have seen this model, but I guess looking at it in terms of, well, what is the expectations in terms of building trust of each of these components? Now, the quartile one, which you may call forming, is the what is really standing out in terms of that team is everyone has and always about respect for each other. And I was talking to someone the other day about a newly formed team, and everyone's kind of tiptoeing around each other, feeling everybody out. They're very respectful. No one's saying anything out of turn. No one's rocking the boat at all. They're just trying to figure out where they sit, where the other people sit. And when you're seeing teams come up and being formed, that is a normal process they go through. But what you're trying to do here all the time is actually progress through these stages. When you start to move into quartile two, which you would call the storming phase of that, is where people are now starting to interact with each other, and they may even be starting to compete against each other in terms of the resources and their position in the team and what have you. People start to open up about themselves and provide disclosures about what they're looking for and what they're hoping to achieve. But you also have this moving to keeping to commitments and starting to build that level of trust. Now, this is interesting. A lot of teams that I work with, although they may think they're a high-performing team, they really are now getting stuck, maybe even at the top end of quartile two. In other words, they go to team meetings, they disclose the information, they provide updates and whatever as to what's going on. They're sharing information about what's happening, and they are doing the job that's required to be done as part of the team. And that's okay if you have a low level, I guess, team activity you're trying to achieve. But really, if you want to get the best result out of that team, you need to move on from there. So how do you go from quartile one to quartile two? Well, it's building that, I guess, that teaming environment where you're sharing information and starting to work. But the key is now, how do I move to 3 and 4? Well, moving to 3 and 4 is now starting to interact and provide recognition and straightforwardness. Now, why is this a little bit challenging to go through? Well, people who are not feeling a high level of trust in the team are not always going to be straightforward in the feedback and the recognition. In other words, they may not engage in robust conversations, if you like, until you move to that stage of robust conversations and providing recognition and support for others. In other words, now I've dropped that whole competitiveness in the process. Now I'm actually out there actively recognizing and supporting my team members, and I'm having straightforward conversations. And this is where I now have switched from where my contribution of trust, which is totally in my control, to where now I'm needing to trust that someone else is going to be straightforward with me and can accept me being straightforward. And if you have a look at the DISC model, we'll have a look at that in a moment. For some DISC behavioral profiles, being straightforward is a little bit challenging. For other profiles in the DISC model, being straightforward is quite easy, but sometimes they're so straightforward that it's actually damaging trust from another point of view. Moving to the performing stage of that is now where I've continued the recognition and I'm seeking excellence. In other words, we are now working together on a continuous improvement model to achieve the best results out of that. And moving through these phases is not as easy as it sounds. As I say, it really requires that team to have a very in-depth understanding of each other and a trust that is reciprocated, not just what I bring in terms of trust to the team. It's now the reciprocation of the other members of the team around open and honest conversations and building that trust where we are now truly operating as a high-performing team. So as I said, it moves from forming to storming to norming to performing. And most organisations, teams that I've worked with really are sitting in this area here around storming to norming. They don't really move to that performance stage in terms of seeking excellence. And a lot of that has to do with when they're stuck in that, the behaviour of the leader of the organisation, where the leader of that, who is more focused on the management side of it and not developing and focusing on relationships, is calling me to account in terms of I say what I'll say, I believe and commit to what I say I do, and I'll demonstrate what I said I'm going to do, and I say what I mean. But the team needs to move to that stage of mutual trust, which without leadership, just with management, is a struggle to move to. So that relationship between trust and DISC really is around, if you're familiar with the DISC model, the dominance model, they're very, very good at straightforwardness. In terms of the influence side of it, they're very, very good at openness. For the steadiness, the strength is acceptance. And for conscientiousness, the strength is reliability. So people are looking from different behavioural points of view. They are delivering and looking for different things from other people to develop that level of trust. So they're the positives. The downside of this is acceptance. So for someone who is in the dominant sector, they're very, very good at being straightforward and providing with their point of view and what have you, but they don't like to be challenged that much. So if you're challenging someone in the dominance quartile, then you may get some pushback there, which may start to erode that trust. In terms of the influence side of it, they're very happy to be open, but their reliability, because they're people-oriented, they have a high need for affiliation, then they are really looking to be people pleasers, if you like, and people pleasers who take too much on may not be able to maintain that level of reliability to do everything they said they were going to do. That becomes a challenge, and reliability is one of the things that I look for in building trust. And if that's not there, then no through fault of their own, because this is not about malicious intent. This is them trying to be the best they can in the environment they're operating in. They're already in an area where they are seen as unreliable, and then it's eroding trust. When we talk about the steadiness, their challenge will be straightforwardness, because they want things to be stable. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to stand out. So they may, if they're feeling it in an environment where it's not a trusting environment, they will hold back in terms of saying what's on their mind or challenging the status quo at that time. So how do I get the best out of those people? For the conscientious, they are very, very reliable, but their challenge will be openness, because they don't want to risk being out there. So once again, withholding openness can be interpreted as an erosion of trust. So knowing what to team and getting your team balanced together to form a high-performance team, getting that balance right and understanding that people do see the world from a different point of view, that there are some, inherent behavioural strengths or weaknesses or challenges that need to be enhanced if you want to build them into a great team. I did a team building exercise with a group, well, two groups actually, a couple of weeks back. One was a group of people where they only sat in two quadrants. So there was about 10 people in the group, and they were all either dominance or influence, D's or I's. They weren't able to actually perform the challenge. They kind of fumbled about. They were a team where they didn't know each other all that well. They went straight into forming mode, and everyone was so polite with everybody else that no one took a leadership role, and they were unable to perform that challenge. Basically, they did not get a result out of that leadership challenge. The next group, which came from the same organisation, interestingly, they had almost an equal balance of people in the D, the I, the S, and the C. And they were able to quickly overcome that challenge and deliver a result. And I found that very, very interesting that, that balance of the team, if you're pulling a team together, would have that kind of influence, even on a very, very simple facilitated activity, if you like. And the activity took about half an hour. That one team took on the challenge and achieved the result, the other team didn't, and their profiles in relation to that. I guess one of the things I've always found quite interesting is that misalignment of culture that can impact teamwork. And a lot of coaching I do one-on-one in terms of organisation, it really is someone who joined an organisation, in some cases has been there for a number of years. The actual culture of the organisation has changed and they don't feel like they fit in anymore. This is a competing values framework. I'm not going to go into that in a lot of detail, but if you're pulling a team together, you need to be aware of the cultural, groundwork for the members of the team and where they may have come from. So if I come into a team that's very hierarchically based and I want to change that culture into an autocracy, well, I need to put some effort into engaging those people and agreeing that that's where we need to go and these are the things we need to do and getting their commitment to be involved in that. If I leave them in their previous cultural mind frame, then I will struggle getting them as part of the team. And I've certainly seen organisations that the management or the senior management, they have tried to switch it, whether it's a clan where you've gone a culture as a family where you're trying to be in a more competitive market or trying to move the culture of that team or culture of that company, and then throwing a team together of people who may not have the same cultural understanding of where they're going. And you'll never get that approval of the individuals, that team and the commitment unless you take the time into building that team from scratch and actually resetting the values of that team and getting people to commit to the things they need to do. Now, I can have agreement on something, but in that agreement may be, well, I don't think this is the best it's going to be, but let me commit to it and we'll see how we go. Because, I mean, not everyone's going to agree with everything that you put on the table. But if you don't move from agreement to saying, okay, what can we commit to? And one of the activities we used to do years ago when we were facilitating team was the requests and promises. If you've got people from different parts of the team that are maybe not agree with where we're going, well, what can we agree on? What are the things you are prepared to commit to? Or trying to get people on board so they do move from that agreement to commitment. Because until you get team commitment, then you have a team that's going to be stuck. So someone once said, becoming a top performing team must be the number one goal of the team. And I think a lot of teams are thrown together. The management and the outcomes of the team start to become a major focus, and the engagement of the team, the leadership, the relationships of the team seems to drop to a second. Now, if you're pulling a team together and you need that team to achieve outstanding goals, then you really need to make being a top performing team one of the key goals of that team and actually put on your morning agenda, whatever it is you need to do, but start setting those goals and objectives of that top performing team and nurture those relationships. because the relationships of people in that team really starts with understanding the individual. It understands how that team is working together and being very clear as to what that team is trying to perform. They are the stages of building a high-performance team. So really alignment of your team, and this comes from Integro. As I say, this is part of their teams assessment survey, which we roll out when we're working with teams. Starts with a purpose, why we exist, why this team has been created is very important. What are we trying to achieve? I mean, I've worked with some teams where I guess the goals of where it fits in and what we're trying to achieve is not maliciously kept from the team, but it's not clear to the team as to what the purpose is. That you do stop and agree as to what the standards of us operating together. I mean, if I bring a group of people together, they will bring all the combinations of all the previous jobs they've ever done and all the previous teams they've ever had. They'll bring those, and if you don't address them and agree what they're going to be moving forward, then you'll get what values they bring. And people have a whole range of values, and depending on what organisation they were with, what that organisation was set up to do, or even the complexity of that organisation will impact, not in a bad way, but they will have a different interpretation. And just throwing the values of the organisation up, which I would call a list of blinker words, in other words, saying we will communicate really means something different to everyone else or everyone that reads that as part of the values. So you really do need to cascade the values of the organisation or create the values for that team so that you have a set of standards you commit to working and dealing together, which actually starts the groundwork. That people have a vision of what team they want that team to become. In other words, you're actually working on that team and a vision for the future. You do have achievements and goals. That priorities are set. Everyone understands what they need to focus on to achieve their goals. That roles and responsibilities are clear. And the team members communicate openly and straightforward to achieve that high level of clarity and approval. Because, as I say, getting that clarity of the message, approval, which leads to commitment, is the key stages of building your team. So that brings us to the end of our presentation at 9:30. So I have a couple of questions that people have submitted. As you see, a lot talking about how does leadership fit into the whole teaming process. Well, leadership is absolutely key. If I want to build a team, yes, there is a management component of it, and people can readily move into that management because they understand it's a very tangible. They can see the process, the policies, the procedures, what needs to be done, the goals and achievements or what have you are there. And it takes a lot of work, but it's easy to see. So it's easy to drift in that direction. What really builds a great team is leadership. It's about, am I building the relationships with the other person? And taking a leadership role where you think you're in charge or being autocratic in your approach to that isn't going to build a team. You're going to end up with a compliance group. You're not going to end up with a team. So that leadership, taking charge of building relationships with the team members. And we're big fans of servant leadership. What is a leader doing to support, develop and grow the team that's around them? So what else have we got? Key tools to motivate a team. Or really building that team around having your goals, objectives, and engaging the team and growing the team members and building those relationships are the tools to motivate the team. People are part of the team because they want to feel engaged. They want to feel part of something bigger than themselves and want to feel that they can contribute. They are the things that motivate it. So it's not about external coming in and running a workshop, or it's not about having a fun day out or on its own. I mean, those things are going to contribute to it, but it's the leadership, relationship building activities you're involved in day to day. That's why I'm not a big fan of performance management, where people meet on a 3-monthly basis or a 6-monthly basis or even a 12-monthly basis to talk about the things that need to be improved. If you're not having that conversation with your team members almost on a daily basis, then performance management in that framework to me is just an excuse for poor leadership. It's interesting, how do I effectively manage others when you're not their manager? Well, you may not be able to manage others when you're not their manager, but you can certainly lead others regardless of where you sit in the organisation. I've seen people step up into leadership roles where they are way down the organisational hierarchy chain and made a massive difference in the organisation. So if you're focusing on leadership, then you're focusing on engaging and building relationships with others, and then you are able to persuade and influence them. Think about the poem that we put up a little bit earlier. Building that trust with people is about building that relationship, and that's how you influence people without necessarily being their line manager. Someone wrote, dealing with various personalities in a team exercise whereby you are reviewing the performance of the team on a number of projects. Well, let's say you do want those different personalities on the team. That's how you get the best out of a team. So it's accepting that people have different points of view, but building that trust and understanding where you are coming from, understanding that other people do not see the same things from the same point of view as you do, but in that is richness. It was interesting working with the team the other day. I asked the question, who thinks everybody thinks the same as you do about anything that's going on around? And everybody kind of said, well, that's ridiculous. Of course they don't. So my next question was, well, why do you treat all the team members exactly the same? And that's where I got a stony silence from the group. Leadership and time management, individual versus team greatness, learning. So I think we've probably pretty much covered most of the questions that people have submitted there. I'm going to just jump out of this and stop sharing for a second, and I'm back online there. Are there any other questions that anybody has? Okay, as we have, I'm just looking at something's coming from Craig. As we have and continue to shift more towards remote work, building trust with new team members has become increasingly difficult, particularly due to limited opportunities to meet face to face. What could be done to start the process of building trust in such circumstances? Well, my response to that is really you need to make building a team. Go back to those fundamentals and say, okay, how do I create an environment where I can demonstrate each of these components of trust, that I don't actually need to physically be in front of somebody to demonstrate those areas of trust and build that team. And it's very, very easy to be remote and to, once again, drop into that management mode without really taking care of that leadership mode. And that's where you can start to build that trust without necessarily having to meet face to face. Make it part of the agenda of the team rather than just having team meetings for the sake of reporting. I guess when we talk about teams, one of the key parts about it is when a team comes together, they need to be working on something together. And the number of times I've worked with groups of people who are calling themselves teams, but they really come and report on their own area. They're not a team at all because they're not actually doing something together to achieve an outcome. So really being clear about what we're trying to do here, what the outcome is, and giving equal focus to that as well as building those relationships is what builds the team together, because they need to have an excuse to be interacting with each other on a regular basis. That's what builds a team. Okay, so I think we are just about done, just on time. So if there's no other questions or input, really appreciate the time you spent with us this morning, and thanks for that. We will be providing the slides and providing a recording of this for you moving forward. Peter James is my name with Career Life Transitions. If you'd like to continue this conversation further, then please give us a call or drop us an email. Thanks very much for your time. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.